There was another workshop with all the water users of Matilda Bay, in which a final location for the ferry stop at Matilda Bay was proposed. Now, there's been a lot of work undertaken by the maritime team and the public transport team of my agency, working, I think, with over 40 water users in the area. And I've got Chris Mather here from the maritime unit of the agency, who will be able to take specific questions. So there's been a lot of work undertaken. There was a multi-criteria analysis undertaken to determine the best location for the two ferry stops as part of our election commitment to expand the ferry service onto in the river. So as part of our election commitment to expand the ferry service in the Swan River. As you know, we already have a very successful ferry service servicing Elizabeth Quay and also Main Street, South Perth. And this is an expansion of that service that will go to Applecross and also Matilda Bay. There are a number of locations discussed, 5 locations discussed. A multi-criteria analysis was undertaken and a location has been announced, and that's the central Matilda Bay location. Now, importantly, when we started this process, initially, a northern site was the proposed location, and that was part of the UWA master plan that had been developed by UWA for a proposed ferry stop. That, of course, was a site that was in close proximity to the rowing shed. As a result of concerns, we worked across all the 5 locations to determine a site that had the best safety, but also other aspects in relation to a proposed stop. So the central location has been chosen. What happens now is we go forward and we go through an environmental process, and we also go through a development application process in which the users again can provide some further input. We also will be having 2 user groups, both the community and the user groups from the waterways too, who will be also 2 user groups will be stood up to make sure in our final planning that we can take into account all the considerations. We're very excited by the expansion of our ferries over across the water. We've seen it being undertaken so successfully in Sydney and also throughout Brisbane. We're seeing more and more keenness to have public transport on the water, Metronet on the Swan, and we're very excited by this next stage. In relation to who will be building our ferries, that's gone out to tender. We are now closed that tender. We've had a lot of interest from Western Australian suppliers. We're now in the process of assessing those tenders, and we'll be able to make some announcements very soon in relation to the successful tenderer to build our new ferries. So we're very, very excited, and this is another milestone, another key stage in the progress as we expand our public transport across the Swan River, as we expand Metronet on Swan. Any questions?
What's the time frame for getting the support up and running?
Well, we're planning in a sense to have it running by the end of 2027. So we'll now go through, as I said, a formal development application process, and that goes through its normal process, a DA process. We've got to build the ferries too, so we were aiming for the end of 2027. Of course, this is the first 2 stops as part of our feasibility. Both Applecross and also Matilda Bay were seen as the first 2 stops because of the patronage, in particular UWA students accessing UWA, and of course Applecross, where you have that significant density that's developed, the thousands of people that have moved into that area.
A month ago we heard from community members, water users around Matilda Bay. They said that no site would be suitable, would be safe, except for near Jojo's restaurant. How did you get them over the line in a month?
Oh, well, there's still some people who aren't necessarily on board with the proposed location, but there's a different range of water users. So, for example, the windsurfers and kite surfers who actually use the water near Jojo's weren't keen on that location. So different water users had different views. We tried to get the right balance. As I said, they're not all satisfied at this point, but we needed to make a decision. And that was done through a significant process that Chris's team led in relation to making sure we're assessing safety, also the ability to mitigate any risks. And look, I would say this, at Barrack Street Jetty, there are ferries and there are also rowers, for example. At Coos Street we have a rowing shed and we've got ferries that come in close proximity. In Sydney and Sydney and in particular Brisbane, you have different water users able to share the water. So this is all about making sure we have the right plans, the right processes in place so that we can have safe and equitable use of our waterways.
There are groups like Sailability where there are blind sailors going onto the river around Matilda Bay. Are you aware of if this will see this group shut down completely as a result?
Oh, we definitely won't be shutting any group down, in particular groups with access who are using our water for and have access issues. We'll be working with all the groups, and that's what we do. We never deny anyone access. What we're going to do is make sure everybody has access and that we do it in a safe way.
During that construction phase, will any parts of that area or waterfront be shut down or closed for construction?
There'll have to be some management and I think a relocation of some moorings in that area because there's some moorings that are owned by the Department of Transport. So there will be relocation of some moorings. There will be some disruption, but not wholesale disruption. And again, managing to make sure people can continue to use what is a beautiful part of the waterways. And look, it's a very exciting time too, I've got to say, for public transport. We know in particular access to UWA from the suburbs is tricky and difficult. We know car parks are at a premium, and as I understand there are some cohort who aren't allowed or aren't even able to access a car park. So this is about making it much easier to get students to UWA, in particular those from the suburbs. And one of the interesting things, and I was talking to some people from Sydney recently, and they were saying that the need for having ferries at a good location for intermodal switch. So what we've got, there's very good bus services, very good ferry services, and of course for those living in the south, for example, being able to use a train, get off at Canning Bridge and get a ferry to UWA, it's going to be an incredible service that I think will become very popular. And for tourism, it really starts opening up the water to everyday tourists. And again, it's something that people enjoy when they go to Sydney, when they go to Brisbane, is being on the water, and this is allowing more people to access our beautiful Swan River.
Has an exact location for the Applecross ferry stop been chosen?
Yeah, so it's very similar to the one that was proposed, and that's right in front of the Raffles. Again, this is an area where you have a lot of density around the precinct. There is walking distance to the train station and, of course, a high-frequency bus service along Canning Highway. So this is very, very exciting, as I said, around Applecross. We know that there has been a lot of density in that area, a lot of apartment buildings that are finished and under construction. We know there is a lot of people living in that area, and this will assist in moving people around that area.
On the 40 groups that you met with this morning, how many water users do they represent?
Sorry, it was the team that met with the water users today. So there's over 40 water
groups?
Yeah. 40 groups, and I'll get Chris to go through some of the detailed discussion that happened this morning.
And you said this is only the proposed site. It sounds more like you've already decided.
Oh, sorry, it is the proposed site that now goes into the development application. So it is our recommended site, but it now goes through a formal DA process where they go through, again, open it up for public consultation and go through that process. But this is the government recommendation in relation to its site.
Are you concerned about health impacts on patients and practitioners from ageing radiology services?
As I understand, Minister Kerry was out today, provided comment on that, and our advice reminds me of a nightclub in the 1980s.
On wheels.
Sorry. Again, I understand Minister Kerry was out today, and again, advice is that there's no dangers to the health of the staff, and that there's a business case currently underway to replace that equipment.
Are you aware why funds aren't being done quickly enough to update these?
Oh, we're spending a record amount in health, so as I understand, this is about getting a business case done that identifies the replacement equipment, and as soon as that business case is done, we'll be making sure we allocate funding. We have allocated a record amount of funding to health, and so we would very much make this a priority.
Do you know how much that business case will cost to do?
I'm not sure, sorry.
Your motion has been passed by the WA Liberal Council to call for the federal opposition to oppose the net zero target for 2050. What do you make of that development?
Sorry, that was
Sorry, that was the
State.
Liberal Council.
Well, the Liberal Party in WA has shown that it is really governed by the extreme right wing of the party. We know that it's not in the centre. It doesn't really reflect normal Western Australians, and I've got to say, I think it continues to make sure that it is at the extreme right of politics. It's governed by the extreme right. The power is all with the extreme right of the Liberal Party. I think Western Australians, and we've seen in WA and nationally, see that the Liberal Party continue to want to not actually understand and reflect modern Western Australia, and they're constantly moving to the right, governed by the extreme right, by the likes of Nick Goran, and I don't think that reflects normal, everyday Western Australians.
State Liberal leader Basil Zemplis actually says he understands the need for targets. He seems to share a different position to some of his federal counterparts. Has this latest development made your job easier in Western Australia?
Well, we know that Basil Zemplis is only there because he did a deal with Nick Goran and the extreme right wing of the party. We know that he hasn't stood up to that extreme right wing, and he's unlikely to, because his job depends on the power of Nick Goran and his clan. So, look, as I said, the Liberal Party constantly moving to the right, to the extreme right. They don't care, nor do they have the interests of people in the suburbs. And as I said, they just a group of grumpy men yelling at clouds.
Just your reaction as well to that same party meeting about the welcome to country and standing in front of the flag. What's your reaction?
As I said, they're extreme right of the party. They want to create culture wars. As I said, if you watch The Simpsons, it's like a group of grumpy men yelling at clouds going past. That's who they are. They don't reflect modern Western Australia, and they just want to create these culture wars as a distraction. We're there delivering for everyday Western Australians, focusing on key issues like health and housing, and we constantly make sure that we're delivering the policies to assist everyday Western Australians.
A federal human rights lawyer has suggested an independent inquiry into the tasering of a man in Embleton who died in recent days. Would you support that call?
Oh, I'll leave that commentary. I'm not aware of the circumstances around that, and I'll leave that in relation to the Minister for Justice and Police.
But given that people with medical vulnerabilities exist in the community and police do use tasers as part of their use of force policy, is there an opportunity here to review WA police use of force?
Well, I'm not aware of all the circumstances around what happened, so I can't really comment until I'm briefed better about the circumstances. I'm happy to be briefed on that matter in the upcoming few days.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Chris
you.
is happy to take a few questions as well. The minister's
I've got to.
take off.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Sorry, Chris.
Thank you. Just your first and last name.
So it's Chris Mather. I'm the Executive Director of Department of Transport and Major Infrastructure, Maritime Directorate.
Great. So obviously 40 groups that you met with today. Talk to us about the number of water users that those groups represent.
Yeah, a wide-ranging number of water users were represented from the Matilda Bay community when we made the presentation today on our multi-criteria analysis and the state government's decision on the location for the Matilda Bay terminal.
It sounds as though this decision isn't going to please anyone, but maybe upset fewer people. How are you going to go about balancing the needs of others in that silent manner?
Yeah. During this morning's session, it was clear that some user groups were disappointed with this decision. However, we have committed to forming the Waterway Safety Reference Group, where we'll be working with all those stakeholders to ensure that we can enable the safe operation of the ferries on the Swan and Canning rivers with the terminal at central Matilda Bay.
Those 40 groups, what percentage or how many were unhappy with the decision?
I can't give you exact numbers or percentages.
More than half?
Hey,
More than half were disappointed?
I'm not going to comment on that. Yeah.
Do you have a rough kind of idea of the proportion of how many people were disappointed?
When a number of these particular waterways user groups represent those users inside Matilda Bay, we will be working with those groups plus more that represent other users that use other areas of the river as well to ensure that we continue the safe operation. To ensure that we plan for the safe operation of these ferries operating to both terminals at